Hey everyone, here is your biggest opportunity to turn your parenting triggers into your greatest growth opportunities. And if you do this, you are already worlds apart from the average parent because this is not something that is spoken about a lot at all. Hey friends, this is a really good one because today I am joined by the incredible Lael Stone. She's an educator, a TEDx speaker, a parenting whisperer, and now the author of the brand new Own Your Story. I just received my copy a few days ago and I'm already knee deep into all of the insights and wisdom, and actually I have a ton of pen and highlighter all throughout it. That's just how I read books. I need to soak up all the goodness. So you know those moments where you promise yourself that you will not yell, and then oops, you do. Or you get so frustrated because your kids are just being kids. Yep, well, Lael is here to help us understand exactly why that happens, how your childhood imprints will sneak into your parenting, and how to finally break free from those loops and those triggers that just keep tripping you up. So we're talking all things emotional awareness, reparenting yourself, I mentioned imprints, and turning your toughest moments into life-changing breakthroughs. Just before we begin, if you're new here, welcome. I am Stephanie Pinto. I'm the host of the Emotionally Intelligent Parenting Podcast. I am a best-selling author, an international speaker, and someone who is just a little bit obsessed about emotional intelligence for big and little humans. I also want to acknowledge the Darug Nation. They are the traditional custodians of the land on which I live and work, and I want to pay my respects to all First Nations people, their elders and their ancestors, and I acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded, and I stand in solidarity towards a shared future. Okay, let's dive in. You guys are going to love this one. Okay, Lael, I think we just jump straight in. Talk to us about imprints. Explain for people who have maybe never heard of the term imprints, imprinting. Take us through, because this is sort of your jam.
Thank you. Well, I describe an imprint as a belief system, a story, an imprint basically that we take on board as children and that we believe to be true. So we have imprints around everything purely because we grow up in our unique family and we watch what happens in our family of origin. So, for example, we can have an imprint around feelings, for example, right? So if we grew up in a household where you were never allowed to be upset, everyone had to be happy all the time, or if something big went on, we just kind of turned the other way and ignored it, then we can have an imprint within us that basically says stuff like, oh, feelings are not okay. Or if I get upset and get angry and my parents yelled at me, then the imprint we can take on board is, it's not safe to express how I feel. We can have really great imprints. So things like, let's just say you grew up in a family where food was a beautiful source of celebration. People came together, they ate, it was seen as this beautiful community thing. And for you, growing up observing and watching and being part of that, you may have that beautiful, rich relationship with eating, sharing meals, celebrating with each other. Equally, it could be the opposite. You grew up in a family where you had to eat everything that was on your plate. Food was a continued stress for you, and that may have become your imprint around something like that. We have imprints around everything, around money, around what success looks like, around our relationship to our bodies, to intimacy, to everything. And really, again, it's not a right or wrong. What my work is often about is helping people to get curious as to what their imprints may have been and how that impacts their life now. So some of the imprints that we received when we were younger don't actually serve us in adult life. And we often continue these patterns and behaviors without even realizing it. And it's often usually when we kind of bump up against stuff or the same themes keep happening in our lives that we start to then go, oh, actually, like, what is this about? Why do I keep repeating this pattern and this story? And a lot of the time it's because that's the book that we read from. That was what was in our house growing up. That is what our parents often talked about, how they lived, and then that's what's been passed on to us. I mean, one of the things I see a lot actually is particularly around the topic of trust. If you grow up in a family where your parents are like, you can't trust anyone and people are sketchy and
Yeah.
people are always going to rip you off, that can become an imprint that we grow up and we are often looking through the lens of, I can't trust anyone, this isn't okay, people are going to let you down. And so sometimes it is a deep subconscious imprint within us that we don't actually even realize exists. So, my work is really helping people to get a bit curious about how they were raised, the impact it's had on them, and what we want to carry forward and what we don't.
Okay, so I feel like the idea of the imprints is what I think of in terms of a blueprint. It's actually the word is not even that different. Like
Yeah,
I've been you know, considering the idea and talking about the blueprints that we get as kids, and it
yeah.
sounds the same that it's these things, these beliefs that we don't even realize we have, as you said, and
Yes.
that when do they get laid? Are these those sort of memories that we don't, they're like those intrinsic or internal, we don't even remember that we got them, but obviously we learned them somewhere along the way, like when our parents said things like, oh, people are out to get you, you can't trust anyone, or you have to eat everything, otherwise you're
Wasteful.
yeah, wasteful. Yeah. Is it those kind of things?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's interesting is some of it is just what we observe and watch in our house. Some of it is actually what our parents can sometimes have as values that they pass on to us. Sometimes it is actually intergenerational, that is just passed down in our family and our legacy. This is what we do. And what's interesting about it is we often will stay loyal to the imprint because our full our fundamental source of belonging, is really around, do I belong in this family unit here? And so we often will stay true to these imprints, true to these belief systems, because we need to belong and we need to feel like we belong. And part of, I think, what often happens in adulthood is we start to question, well, is this what I want to do? And particularly when we become parents, it's such a beautiful mirror of our stuff. And we start to actually go, yeah, I don't know if that really serves me or not. Yet sometimes it's very hard for us to give up those imprints because we have this unconscious loyalty to our family unit and our family belonging, even if it's not something that actually really serves us. But there's a part of us that often stays very loyal to it. And the other thing that I often say too is around being curious about this is we are constantly imprinting our children as well with stories, belief systems, all that kind of stuff. So part of, I think, the inquiry is not only looking backwards to really look at, as you say, that blueprint, like what was the foundation there, but also what is it that I'm setting for my children? And, what if I was to ask them in 20 years, what was your imprint around feelings? What was your imprint around relationships? What do you think they would say? Because they're watching us and, we are modeling that to them right now. So I think it's a really beautiful place to get curious around, who do we want our kids to be in the world and who do we want to be in the world? And are there some ties to the past that's keeping us stuck there?
Ooh, so is it possible then for us to change our imprints as adults?
100%, 100%. So an imprint, really, or as a blueprint, as you talk about it, is it's just a story that we believe to be true. And what's interesting is you can have a few siblings in the one family. They'll actually often have a different take and a different imprint on what it is, because depending on the role you were born into, depending on what you take on board, we can see things in many, many different ways. And it's all about perception. It's what we make it mean, it's what we believe it to be true. And a lot of the time, it actually isn't even true because, our memory, again, sometimes we often create stories that actually haven't even happened, but they kind of they keep us stuck in our stories and protection and all that kind of stuff. So it is really literally a story that we have told ourselves. And because it is a story, we actually can create another story to begin to change what that looks like. However, I think the first place to start is to be curious around what the stories that we believe are there. And then that's where we
Mm.
can work from.
So how do we know if we have imprints? I know that you said when we have kids, they're such a beautiful mirror. It's like this explosion, this like can open, and we're like, oh my goodness. I remember for my when our oldest was young, I often say that he experienced mum and dad 1.0 before I learned about all of this stuff and emotional intelligence and everything. And then our youngest got mum and dad 2.0 because it was kind of around then that we like between when we had them. But like I remember we smacked him and I threw him in timeout and I would get so frustrated. And I'm from like an English family. So we were very, we don't talk about feelings. Everything is fine, swept under the rug. And so like that was my imprint, and it was really hard. Now, though, obviously things have changed, but um, I guess what is my question? It's really hard to change imprints, or like how do we recognize that we have imprints?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, beautiful question. And I mean, I love just in your sharing there, like it's really clear, like you were like, that's what we were doing because that was probably what was done to us until you actually go, that doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
And probably in your investigation of like, well, how do we do this differently? You would have kind of looked at the past and gone, oh gosh, well, that's how I was treated and that's all I've known. And I want to do it differently. And so we begin to challenge those stories and imprints and we begin to behave differently and we begin to respond in different ways. So that's one way that we begin to shift and change it. I think in how do we know what's there? Well, I think we just got to get curious on all these topics. So particularly, I mean, the easiest place to start is to look at what annoys you or what triggers you. Like, if it's if it's someone you get really fired up because I don't know, a colleague is lazy and it just really annoys you. Well, we could get curious and go, well, what is it about them being lazy that really fires you up? Now it might have been that you grew up in a family where laziness was not tolerated and you had to keep moving all the time and you had to keep achieving. And if ever you stopped, you got frowned upon because worth was measured by how successful you are or how much you're doing in the world. So, that may be a story that you carry, which can have some benefits because it can make us work hard, but also is it at the cost of our well-being and our mental health? And so when we see someone who's lazy and we get really fired up about it, what's happening for you in those moments? What is sitting
Mm.
there? I mean, the
Mm.
classic one is often, when we have children, when our kids get upset and we might find ourselves getting angry and we want to shut it down and we want to yell and all the beautiful stuff that you talk about as well, is it in those moments what is coming up for us? And if we were to pause and look back and think, well, when I was 5, how was I responded to when I got angry? Or what happened when I made a mistake? Was I shut down? Was I
Mm.
smacked? Was I sent to my room? So there's a story there, there's an imprint that says those feelings aren't okay. And so then when we have our own children, and they behave in that way, often what happens is all those feelings surface again. And those pains and those hurts that were there around perhaps us not getting our needs met surface in that moment with our kids. And we're like, oh, I don't want to feel this. So I need to make whatever's happening here stop, which is why we yell, why we
Mhm.
try and shut down, or we just give in to whatever they want to keep them quiet because often what it's doing is activating within us our own wound or our own story or our own trauma within it.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important to remember that as humans, we're always coming from protection. We're always trying to keep ourselves safe. And we're always trying to, we're always looking in any moment to go, is this safe for me here? What's going on? Like our bodies are constantly scanning for that.
Mm.
And so I think that particularly with emotional awareness or stuff like that, when something is being triggered within us, it's our natural default to say, I want to make that stop. It does not feel okay, it does not feel safe. So I think when we're looking at, well, how do we discover what our imprints are? You can begin by just looking at what triggers you, or you can have a real think about, what are the core kind of values or stories that I want for my kids, and that could be around what do I want their relationships to be just respectfully, how do I want them to feel about their bodies? What is the relationship I want them to have about doing jobs that they love or money? What is the relationship I want them to understand about trust or about, being of service to others? Like whatever's important in your world. And then you just kind of ask, well, what was modeled to me around that? What was the stories and the belief systems I took on board around that? And that can help us kind of delve a bit deeper to see what might be sitting there.
Okay, so there's so much there, and you articulate it so beautifully. I'm wondering with people who've experienced trauma, so really, really challenging, really stressful, or really scary experiences as kids, where can they start? I assume a whole lot of compassion has to come into getting curious. I love that you said that a few times. We just have to be curious. It's not like we're throwing out and we're totally ripping out all our beliefs, but it's being curious about which ones serve us and which ones don't. But with people who've experienced those more difficult, really scary moments, what is your advice to them? And I'm even thinking of some people that I work with and know that say, I don't really remember much of my childhood. Where do they go?
So I think that is quite a common response. I don't remember much of my childhood, and I think There's a reason why we do that, which is, I think, more of a protective reason for us. We sometimes go, that's too painful to think about. So
Mm.
we kind of store it away somewhere where we're like, I don't want to access that, which again is just a protective thing. It's not bad, it's not wrong. And when you're coming to looking at something like trauma, I love that you mentioned compassion because whenever we're looking at trauma, the most important thing is that we go gently and we go slowly and we go compassionately. I think it's so important for us to understand that as humans, we are hardwired for protection, but
Mm.
the way that we respond to trauma is all about trying to keep ourselves safe. So we have a scary incident when we're a child or something bad happens to us. If we don't have the adults around us who are attuned to us, who are able to see what's going on here, to listen to our tears, to listen to our fears, to listen to all those things, then the body just goes, oh God, this is not safe to let out. I've got to hold on to this. And it buries it down deep. And then when we are in situations that have a similar theme to what our trauma was, or we're in places where we feel really out of control or really powerless, then our feelings can surface again in the moment because the body goes, oh, we remember this and this is not okay. And then
Mm.
we start to have panic attacks or we feel really anxious or other stuff starts to come out. So I always come back to firstly that your body is so clever and your body really is a barometer of where you're sitting with things. Now, sometimes we work really hard to just numb it so we don't have to feel it, but then it kind of always seems to creep out the side somewhere. And then, I think in our culture, we're very good at numbing and we're very good at kind of turning the other way. So we just go, okay, I need more of this or need more of that. But I think that one of the most powerful things we can do with the right support is turn towards our story and really gently go, okay, what is it that unfolded? What is it that happened? What is my body carrying? What is it that I never got to complete in that experience? Did I, if somebody treated me unfairly, did I, as a 6-year-old, never get to turn around and go, I don't like that, and that's not fair, and stop it? And a lot of the time we don't get to express the pain, the hurt, the rage that we feel. And so what we can do, with different therapy is create a safe space where we can go back and just speak all the things that were not spoken so we can actually let the body complete what it needs to. I mean, I always come back to the body's very clever. It's got this inbuilt healing mechanism. And when we are feeling stress and when we're feeling overwhelmed and when we're feeling trauma, it's designed to move it, and it does it through shaking, through crying, through laughing. It can do it through talking, but usually the body has to move it in certain ways so it doesn't kind of get locked in there. So I think when we're looking at trauma, and I really do believe we all have degrees of trauma. I mean, some people grew up in very just unhealthy or dangerous environments where they have complex trauma, where it was very unsafe and there was either a lot of neglect or abuse or stuff that was really unfortunate. And, I have so much compassion for those people because, they learn from a very early age, I can't really trust the adults around me. I have to survive here. So they develop incredible skills to stay safe and to survive. But they also often have just to lock all that stuff down within because there's
Yeah.
no place to take it.
Mm.
And then we have acute traumas, which are things like car accidents or being bitten by a dog or medical stuff that most of us will have at least some point in our lives that where we feel scared and we feel out of control. And again, the body goes into this like reactive state where it's like, this isn't okay, and we have to give it the space to move it. But I also think that we have what I call connection trauma, which is just where most of us as little kids actually didn't get our needs met. We weren't listened to in the way that we needed. Perhaps we were yelled at or shut down when we cried. Perhaps we weren't attuned to in the way that we wanted to be. And those can create little ruptures and traumas within us that again become part of those imprints and stories of how we interact with other humans in the world, whether we are always on high alert, whether we're really cautious, whether we have a really insecure attachment and we're constantly wanting reassurance, whether we are, have a really, strong wall up that just says I can't let anybody in and I can't feel anything because it's unsafe. I mean, again, we all do these things, right? And none of it is wrong. It is all protection. And one of the things I talk a lot about in my work is when we have trauma or we have pain there, the only way through is through a compassionate lens. We have to go gently, we have to go slowly, we have to get the right support around us that makes it feel safe to really just gently untangle some of these stories and beliefs so that we can actually have the life that we want, where we get to operate from that beautiful, authentic self, that beautiful part of who we truly are. So I really do believe that in order to, I guess, live our most authentic lives, we have to understand our past so we can step towards our future in the way that we want to.
Okay, so what would you say if you were standing in front of a parent? I'm going to put you on the spot. If you imagine you were standing in front of a parent who is listening to this and thinking, that is me. I experienced some of those really difficult, scary moments as a kid. And now I find myself not reliving, but like I can't get out of the loop of snapping at my kids, or feelings are unsafe, so I just shut them down. And I'm trying, and this stuff sounds really good, and maybe I listen to podcasts and read books, but I'm stuck in that kind of loop. And I know I had a childhood where it was very scary and difficult, and not a lot was accepted.
Yes.
What would you say to that parent to kind of give them some hope that, none of obviously we can't go back and change our experiences, but with compassion, and I love how you say we can gently untangle.
Yeah.
I love that concept. Like we can heal parts of that. What would you say to like a parent who's like, this is me all over?
Yeah. So I just want to firstly say that I really do believe healing is possible. I've worked with adults for over 20 years now and seen some of the most extraordinary healing happen when the time is right and when we're ready and when we've got the right support around us. So I really do believe it's never too late for healing. I think one of the incredible things about us as humans is our resilience, and I think one of the big pieces I see when parents are looking at their own traumas is they make themselves wrong for feeling angry or for getting anxious or for reacting with their kids. And I always just firstly want to start by saying, please give yourself a break here because your body, your system's responding to an environment where perhaps it's really stressed, where perhaps your trauma is being activated, where you actually maybe just need a break, right? Because parenting's full on and our reactions and responses, we often want to make ourselves wrong and beat ourselves up about it. But I think, again, one of the first steps is to go, hey, you are doing the best job you can right now under the circumstances that you've got. So we have to start from a place of just even the tiniest bit of compassion for this is where I am and this feels tricky. So once we kind of get to a place where we're like, all right, there's stuff here, I need to work with it. We can start, if we don't have access to therapy or for someone to hold space for us, you can start by journaling. Journaling's a great way to begin, where we can just really gently just go, what are the feelings that surface for me in the moment? What is it that triggers me the most? So one of the things I say to parents, if we just start with the here and now, and whether that's because your kids won't put their shoes on or they won't get in the bath or, they're just your siblings are fighting or whatever is going on, like, watch where you lose it, watch where you get reactive. And the first question you want to ask yourself is, well, what am I feeling in this moment? So it might be like, I'm feeling rage or I'm feeling frustration. And then we could just firstly, kind of go through a bit of a checklist. All right, am I losing it because basically I just need a break and I haven't eaten lunch and I'm hungry? So sometimes it's our needs that send us off. Sometimes, we are in a loop where we're being activated into those feelings of powerlessness or helplessness or those kind of things, which can relate to our trauma sometimes, can relate to those feelings from childhood. So what's here in this moment? I feel frustrated. Why do I feel frustrated? Because the kids won't listen. What does that bring up for me? It brings up for me that, maybe I'm not a good parent because they won't listen to me. Can we go a little bit further? Does this feeling remind you of something? Is this something that you've known before? And, you might in your journals be like, yeah, this is how I felt as a kid constantly because nobody listened to me or nobody, checked in with me or nobody cared about my needs. It was just about everyone else's needs. And we're like, okay, we're getting closer, right? We're getting closer to what is the root of the feeling that is sitting here. And I really do believe this, that our children, I mean, they're just the perfect mirrors for all that crap, right? Because they're sitting there saying, hey, mum, hey, dad, I really want to live a life where I get to be authentically me. But what I need in order to do that is for you to not place all your baggage on my shoulders. So I'm just going to mirror back to you the things that you need to work on, right? This is what our kids do constantly. They bring to us our shadow to look at. So, as we start to get curious about that, as we start to then not see the child as wrong or bad or the enemy, but just what are they highlighting here? What can happen is that we get to start to be a bit curious. We get to look at, okay, there's a real thing for me around when people don't listen, or there's a real thing for me about being respected, or there's a real thing for me about feeling out of control. And from there, what I often say is we can move into doing some inner child work, which is where we, ask ourselves those questions. How old do I feel at right now? You could be like, I feel like a 5-year-old, and my next, inquiry is something like, well, what would that 5-year-old say if the 5-year-old could speak? And the 5-year-old might be like, it's not fair that things don't go the way I want, and why is no one taking care of me? And our job, in this reparenting piece is to be able to just sit there and listen and say, I hear you, and I'm sorry that didn't happen. And we offer the younger parts of us that are really activated the love and the kindness and the compassion that perhaps they didn't get. And so we can do that just through journaling, through inquiry. You can do it through, something I'm a big fan of is a listening partnership, which just can be another friend, a mum, a cousin, whoever it is, where you can just WhatsApp them or Vox them or
Mm.
whatever when you're having a hard time. And you can just be like, I just need you to listen to me for 10 minutes. And we get to have a big rant and rave about how the kids won't listen and things feel really hard. And in that moment, often when we get to just speak it and it's heard by someone who is compassionate and loving and doesn't try and fix us and doesn't judge, then often again, as we get that out, we begin to see, oh, what else is sitting here underneath the surface? So that's another way. Listening partnerships to me, it's how I got through, parenting. My oldest is 25 now, so I had many years of parenting, not only toddlers but through those teen years. That's where I think I needed the listening partner more than anyone, to
Mm.
just be able to pick up the phone and go, this feels really big for me. This is really activating. And when I was heard and listened to, not only would it help my nervous system calm, but it also helped me to get a little bit more insight into perhaps where I was being activated and why. So we can do that. We can also go to therapy, which is amazing. We can see counselors, therapists, someone who can hold the space for us to do a bit more of that deeper inquiry into our trauma or into the stories that are sitting there. I mean, the other thing I just really want to say is that we all move at different paces, and I think timing is really important as to when we delve into this stuff. And sometimes things have to get really hard and there's a bit of a crisis, and that's when we move into it. For me as a parent, I just really wanted to be the kind of most conscious parent I could be with my kids. So I didn't wait till it blew up. What I tried to do is just watch where those little irritations popped up. And every time I started to lose it or wanted to yell, I'd be like, oof, there's something else here. What do I need to work on for me? So I
Mm.
can turn up and be the parent that I want to be. And it's an ongoing process. Like, I mean, I have big adult kids now, and all three of them are still living at home. It's like living in a share house at the moment. I often say. And it's not so much my kids that trigger me now, it's other things. So I still, even after doing this work for a long time, I can still watch and observe where I lose my energy to something, and I'm like, oh, what's that about for me? Is that an old story? Is that a pattern? What is here? And I think the work is constantly ongoing. And what we get better at is being able to catch it, be curious about it, being able to see what's underneath it, and then we actually can move it pretty quickly. We don't have to hang around in it for weeks and weeks and make everyone's life hell.
Mm.
So, sometimes I think when we can get really good at just being curious about our reactions and our responses, that's where we start kind of taking ownership of our lives and our power. And that's actually where we get to start living our most powerful lives, because we all have a past and we all have a story. And I think one of the most powerful things we can do is to realize that we don't have to let that story define us.
Oh my goodness. You've shared so wholeheartedly and so openly, and just the way you explain. I love that you are so non-judgmental. I think you use words like activation. Like sometimes we say I'm really triggered, but activated, it just has a different feel. And you just said, we all have a past. We've all been through different experiences, some huge and some still, that really hurt us. And I just love that curiosity keeps coming up. It's non-judgmental, it's gentle, It's compassionate. It's not saying this was really bad and that shouldn't have happened and my parents should never have, it's not that. But I love how you're inviting us gently, like it's doable. You're giving us hope. I just love everything you have shared. Can you please tell us about Own Your Story? Because I know that everyone is going to want to get their hands on it, me included. So tell us a bit about that.
Thank you. So that's my second book, which is really about like what we're talking about here. We kind of look at some of the core imprints that we have in our lives. It's a beautiful guide in the book because it asks you lots of questions and reflections for you to take a look at and get curious about your own stories. And then it gives you tools of how we can help shift some of these imprints, how we can move towards what we do want and what we want to create. It's not just for parents, it's for anyone at all because we've all been a child and we've all got imprints. So it's for anybody. And I think it's, for me, it really is just a book that helps people get curious about their lives and ask the question, what do you want? What do you want this to look like? Because I think one of the other things I've found after doing this work for a long time with parents is that we're really good at just staying stuck in our stuff and we're really good at just being complaining and doing the in and out. And I think that we forget to dream. I think we forget to go, well, actually, what do I want for my life? What do I want for my kids? What do I want for my relationships? Like we are all really powerful humans. I think we just forget. And I think we can feel and stay really stuck in our stories. And I have just seen too much transformation to happen in the world to know that that's the only option. I think there is absolute possibility for us living really beautiful lives and being the parents that we want to be. It just actually requires us to get a bit curious and to be a bit courageous, to kind of lean into some of the sticky stuff. But on the other side of that, I promise you, is amazing. It's transformation. It's possibility. It's all the good things.
Oh, wow. So if people are listening and thinking, oh, this sounds incredible, this is where I want to go, this is what I want to do, and I'm ready, then I think your next book, Own Your Story, you said it, it's a guide. If you think, where do I start? This sounds great, but I'm not sure and I don't have the framework, well, then here we go. This is it. So I will put all the details in the show notes of this episode. And if you're watching on YouTube, I will put it down below so you can have a look at where to get it, where to pre-order it. If people want to find out a bit more about you and your work, where should we point them?
You can find me at laelstone.com.au. I often joke that one of the good things about having a weird name is that I am the only Lael Stone when you Google it. So that's handy for now. So if you Google me, you'll find me. So
and we'll probably find your TED Talk too.
Yeah, all the things on there, my TED Talk, my other book, lots of different podcasts and courses and all the kind of stuff on my website. So, and I'm at the same on socials, just at Lael Stone. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you so much for your time. It's been a joy just talking to you. So thank you.
Thanks for having me, Stephanie.
How good was that chat with Lael Stone? I just love her gentle and compassionate way of helping us see that there is nothing wrong in your story. It's all protective and it's workable. And guess what? Remember I mentioned this at the start. Her brand new book is now out. It came out at the end of July. It's called Own Your Story. This is my copy. I'm holding it up for you guys watching on YouTube. You can see it. It is beautiful. And I promise you it is packed with wisdom and insights. All of the things that you just heard in today's episode, she has packed it into like a couple hundred pages. I think I'm going to finish this definitely in the next week. On the first night, I read through 55 pages. I was just like speed reading. It was so good. So I encourage you to grab your copy to start soaking it up and making these little like shifts in your parenting from the inside out. I'm going to put all the links to the book and Lael's work in the show notes or in the YouTube description. You guys will be able to see it all there. And until next time, please go easy on yourself. Keep growing that emotional intelligence muscle and be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself. I just want to highlight that point. I want to drill it home. This stuff is not meant to be easy. Otherwise we would all wham bam done. It would be all perfectly fine and easy. But this is a journey. So take your time, use Lael's work and a little bit of mine and other people's that you see and listen to, because we're all here on the same journey. See you next time.